I made Rouge from Sonic Heroes at Jakks specific 4-inch figure scale, and here's how I did it. I'm going to show you how I sculpted parts of the original game model to make them more smooth, how I dyed parts, and how I painted all the tiny details on what might be one of my most complex paint jobs yet. I started off by scanning the original Rouge figure so I could resurface the model and use it as reference. This is my first attempt at making a single body piece for the center, with the joints just fitting in with friction. It's also the first time I've used hobby joints in a figure, because the boot just goes too high on the knee. It was going to need to be replaced for sure if she wanted to have any kind of articulation. I also needed a way to connect the wings with a magnet, so I just gave her this little backpack that I made up to house the magnet parts. The original wings didn't have a lot of fidelity to them, so I kind of recreated the bone parts using cylinders, and then traced out the shape and extruded it in order to create the parts in between. I made the hands by starting with some hand poses from a rigged version of a generic hand that I had. Then I recreated the little platform on the top of it. Then, using just some of the common joint shapes that I know work, I cut those out of the base of the hand. I had to cheat up the size of some of the pieces because otherwise the bits wouldn't fit in for the joints. You can see the foot is a two-part piece that both has the top of the boot and the bottom, with the joint fitting snugly in between. Then once I smoothed the wing, I used a bend modifier so that I could get just the right amount of bend that I wanted for the figure. As I mentioned, the original model wasn't that detailed, so I had to go in and add a lot of curves and extrude different parts of it so that they would show up as actual parts of the geometry that we could paint on. Getting just the right curve to the shape on the foot was actually pretty difficult. Something about it, I don't know, just about the 3D space that I was trying to fit it into, just had a lot of awkward looks depending on how I'd merge it with the rest of the model. I don't know if you heard that, but that was Poppy chiming in to tell you to subscribe if you haven't already, and if you have, like and comment on this video. Anything else you want to say? Thank you very much. Then I resurfaced the 3D scan using the Create Polygon tool in Maya. You can see I'm putting a lot of edge loops here in the way that you would normally do it for a video game or film. Since I'm just using this to get started on a head sculpt in ZBrush, it's not really necessary, but it is good practice. You might notice certain areas do not have good topology, and that's okay in this case for what I was doing. For some reason I just got really tired of resurfacing, so I just made a ball for the back of the head and used that as the base that I would later sculpt on. You can see here I'm fitting it into position instead of just resurfacing everything, because after all the 3D scan wasn't great either, so this was a nice balance of my being tired of resurfacing and actually needing to come up with something else for the areas that didn't scan. I needed to cut some holes out of the boot pieces. The idea was that we'll cut Sonic's leg in half at the thigh, and then Dremel a hole that the hobby joint can slip into. But around that is this kind of sheath-like piece that goes over the leg, and I needed to make sure that I could cheat this to be thick enough so that it actually has some structure around it. To measure out how big that hole needed to be, I compared it to my 3D printed test hole pieces. You'll see these sometimes that I use to figure out the starting point for a joint size of something that I need to just figure out what the tightness is on the physical model, and then use that geometry for holes in my 3D model. Then it was on to sculpting in ZBrush. I needed to just sculpt on top of that very loose representation of retopology that I did, and just kind of build out all the forms and really start to get the shape of the character, all the details that I wanted, figuring out how to do the little hair pieces that come off. Wasn't sure how sharp that I wanted to make them. And in the end, I think I got a right balance between what I see in the video games, what I see in the toys, and in the smooth renders. I went back and forth a lot trying to get this back of the head just right. Here I'm really starting to separate a lot of the elements like the head from the eyelids, and I always exaggerate this step because when it comes to the 3D print, you're gonna lose some detail. So I always go a little bit extra depth on all these parts. I use the masking tool to mask off the section of the eyes that I want to pull in. And then using the mesh tools, I subtract it into the body and then I sculpt and refine on top of that. But I wanted perfectly spherical eyes, so what I do is I create a, not perfectly spherical, but a oblong egg shape that I can then fit into position. I don't need to worry about trying to get just a perfect sculpt on it, because I'll use a separate object to do it. Over time, things started to get smoother and smoother, and I was able to add details like this cute little mouth here that's off to the side, smirking. You'll see I didn't put the eyes perfectly centered. I have them with an expression over to her left. And I wanted to just try this, something new. Usually mine are just straight looking forward without too much expression on their face. So I just wanted to mix it up. If there was any character to give an expression, I think Rouge is a great one to do that. Then I started sculpting her eyelashes on top of everything. Normally these would stick out in the game, but obviously that's going to be too fragile for a 3D print. And I don't know why I did this. I just did some quick coloring because I was bored. I wanted to have a nice render to show people. Just giving it some color on the muzzle and on her eyelids, and I just wanted to see how it would look when it was finally painted. In retrospect, even though I was just playing around with this, I think it was really important to make sure that she would have the expression that I wanted once I painted her. I tested the size of the hobby joints against the 3D printed square that I have with different size holes, so I know it was a good starting point for making holes in the 3D printed parts. I got a Walmart Sonic because this is the easiest to find, and I started taking it apart. First time I ever did this, it was super easy to take apart when I did it for Trip. Every Sonic that I've taken apart since then has been really, really hard. Basically have to just destroy the body, chip it away one part at a time as I try to pry it open. If any of you have better techniques to do this, I am all ears. Unfortunately, on my first test printing, the joint for the hip got stuck in there and broke. So there goes $10 of a Walmart Sonic. And then here's the first test fitting of the joint. It was a bit too tight. I had to go back and forth a little bit on the length, and I noticed it actually had a taper coming up that I wasn't aware of originally. The idea here is that I would try to pull out the knee joint and then I would Dremel down the rest of the pieces of the knee and use a Dremel bit to actually make it wider. Unfortunately, my test prints for the first knee parts did not go over properly, and so that was going to take more work as well. I discovered a new type of primer lately that I love. It's this Colorforge matte, and in this case I used white over everything just because that's really hard to paint over, so I want to use this as a base for a nice solid white across everything. I think it looks really nice. Hey, are you helping? You helping? The first try at dyeing the parts didn't work because this is not RIT synthetic dye. For some reason I thought in the past any RIT worked for me, but I guess maybe just in the past I'd always used synthetic. So what I'm pouring here does not work. I was too busy, so I sent my wife to Walmart to pick up some more Sonics, and she also found this guy. Poppy likes him too. Hey, yeah, say what up. What up? They got me this while I was working, so I didn't have to go anywhere. Now with the correct dye, we were ready to get going. Here's the arms and legs when I tried to do the wrong dye and it just didn't work out. We're throwing them in here with about 50% water and heat it up. It's going too much. Oh yeah, it's rising. It's rising. Ah. A little bit too much. Now I had them dyed mostly purple, not quite the right shade. It was time to move on to actually painting the figure. The hole came out a little bit too small, especially after priming. So I needed to just drop a tiny bit of super glue in there and then try to get some of that out. And then the magnet just barely fit in. And the magnet on the other side as well. And yeah, this stuff ran so much. It was super, super thin. Look at that. There's like smoke coming off it from the chemical reaction. And I started building out the pink parts of everything, the rings around the cuffs of the hand. This tiny little sliver of things here underneath the boot. And then in these little waist areas, it was really hard to not mess up that really nice white paint job. I got my tightest, cleanest brushes and went as slowly as I possibly could. And I did her eyeshadow very, very carefully. And as always, I thinned down my paints. I kind of worry that I thinned it down too much because it took a lot of coverage for this paint to go over it all. I wonder if I should have gone a little bit thicker. After a lot of coats, it was finally coming out. The purples, I tried to mix a bunch of colors together. I just could not get the right shade of purple no matter what I did, mixing in blues and reds, and ended up just getting really dark and muddy and desaturated. It just wasn't a good purple. I did resign myself to using that at first, but you'll see later in the video that I actually go back with a better color than this. Kinda looks nice here though. Also painted the joints that color. Again, very carefully up against those nice white extruded parts of the body. Thanks YBZ for the suggestion. They had one remaining of the royal purple. I was gonna have to leave here with regular purple otherwise. with it. Well, I didn't even mess that one up. These are the colors I came back with, but for some reason the yellow display looked a lot more like a tan. That wasn't going to be the muzzle color at all. I also realized that the official 3D render of Rouge had a more magenta eyeshadow than the rest of the body, while the rest of the body had pink parts to it. So I went with just leaving this kind of a magenta and then going back and doing this brighter pink on all the pink parts and this more official YBZ suggested color on the feet. I really wanted to make sure that I got all the lines exactly the same. You can see that the two colors are night and day. The other one practically looks blue. Now, I hate how ugly this footage looks. I was being so careful, and it does not look good as a work in progress. I'm just trying to put all these tiny, gentle strokes down there without touching any of the pink. And it took a while, but I got it. And I just used some peach color that I already had. I believe it was D&D Flump Pink. And it was close enough to her muzzle color that I was happy with it. I used some Citadel Forest Green for the eyes. I ought to have thinned this down. I actually just took it straight from the bottle. Always thin your paints. I think at this part of the project, I was just kind of tired of working on it. I was ready for all the stress of all these details to be done. And speaking of stress, these eyelashes. You can see my hand naturally shakes, and I'm trying to be as sturdy as possible with my nicest, cleanest brush. And it was just a challenge. Here she is coming together. I did little details for the lips. Been cleaning my brushes a lot better lately. This is a preserver and cleaner. I don't know the full details of how to work with it yet, but generally I'll run it under some warm water and then get it very sudsed up in the soap. You can see some purple there. I think I needed to clean it better. And depending on whether you're just trying to clean a brush or just keep it nice, there's different techniques that you do with this. But I don't have those details. I'm new to cleaning brush as well. Once I had everything painted, I set them up to be sealed. I have this down in my basement because it was raining that day. Basically, when I'm about to leave the house, I crack open some windows and then I seal inside an empty room in the basement and then get out of the house because I don't want to breathe any of that stuff. I'm using a matte sealer. It looks like it's glossy when it goes on, and I kind of like the look, but it turns out matte. I use my Dremel to cut off half of the knee. I actually did this on stream, but this footage is from my first prototype, so you might notice the colors of the plastic are just a little bit different for that reason. I use the saw bit to cut it, and then I use a little drill bit to try to go into the center and get just the right size hole. Now the most updated prints for this fit pretty well on the joint, but in this case, this was a piece that had too big of a hole, but I didn't want to waste it. So I put some super glue in it and just kept wiggling it around while it dried. This is a trick that I use often in customs making. I think I did it on the neck of this as well. And basically, you don't let the glue hold it in place, but you do let it dry in such a way that it kind of fills in the gaps between them and gives them a nice clearance. You have to be really careful not to let it set, though. This is the final result. I am really happy with this figure. I got some of the cleanest lines that I've ever done. I rarely do a good job painting white, so it was nice to have the white primer. Her wings are a little fragile, so it makes me a bit nervous, but overall, she's a great piece, and I love that I took that extra work to make those knees. Taking some photos.
Getting in the way of the shot.
Thanks to everybody who watched this live on stream. We have Alex the Pirate Doggo, Maxi, Pro Tyler, Raphael Movie Channel, YBZ, Go Play Outside, Choppus, Ken de Guzman, Amy, Pichu Sonic, Malamations, Jurassic Animation, Samantha Audrey, Highwell Plays, Chaos Cola 2, Pink GameCube, Phantom Rider Edits, Chaotic Fire, Hoovaloo, Fortner Dude, Guardian Sora, The Sonic Geek, Daisy Garcia, Hugh Hugh, E Scrubby, and Yarn Yoshi Plays. And as always, thank you so much to the Patreon supporters, Kurotsuchi, Hoovaloo, Cyberamic Puppy, Jay Starfield, Choppus, YBZ, Tomato is JP, and Pro Tyler. Thanks a lot for watching.